All right, let's go ahead and get started. I want to make sure we're really thoughtful about everybody's time tonight and that we're able to get through all the amazing things that we have planned and important information to give out, conversations that we're going to have. So my name is Stacy Rutland. I am founder of Income Movement, and this is our third quarterly meeting that we've had together that is a State of the Movement meeting. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen so that we can all just be here on the screen together. So it's lovely to see so many different participants, grassroots community members, and members of different organizations that are working deeply in the space of fighting for basic income. So I'll talk a little bit about what we're going to do together, but first we want to cover some logistics. I suspect that most of you who are on here have been part of many webinars, so it's all pretty straightforward, but just to make sure. A couple of things. One, you see that the chat is activated and people are introducing themselves, which is wonderful. We have a few different people at Income Movement that'll be on there to help keep you guys kind of informed of all the information and links to things that people might reference as we have this conversation together. It's lovely to see where everybody's from. Everyone, from New York to Minnesota and across to California. It's great to see you. The first half of this conversation, we'll be hearing from leaders and kind of core team members of some of the different organizations that are doing work in the space of basic income. We've broken that into some different topics, and we'll do some Q&As after we hear a little bit from people, but before we move on to another topic. So you'll see along the bottom that there's a Q&A field for you to be able to actually put in. Obviously, chat is a great place to just be making comments and things like that. But if you have a specific question that comes up as we're having conversations around specific topics, definitely drop them in the Q&A, and we'll make sure before we get too far away from the topic, we give an opportunity for us to ask some of your questions. That'll be about the first half or 2/3 of the of this event. And then we'll move into a little bit more of what we might think of as kind of a brainstorm or conversation with all of you. So we'll actually invite many of you guys to be part of the conversation, and so that you can be kind of a panelist to ask questions. We can be a little bit more, a little bit less formal and a little bit more in the brainstorm and conversation space to not only process and think about what we've heard from all these amazing panelists, but also to think about and target what we want to be spending some of our time and energy on as a community in the coming months. And so I'm going to just say right now, there's a survey that we've sent out to most of you, especially if you're on our newsletter list. We're going to drop it in just here for you. This is a survey that we're actually going to look at the results of live. I think we were up to like 60 or so people who have taken it, but we want to make sure if you're on this call, on this event right now, take a minute to fill out that survey, because we're going to be looking at the results live, and that's going to help inform some of the conversations we have about what kinds of topics and events do you guys want to be seeing? What does a summer event series look like? How can we kind of help get our communities ready for the Basic Income March in September? Some of those things that we know that we're going to really dive into together over the coming months. So the survey's there, take it. It's just a few questions, so it shouldn't take too long. And then I want to just take a moment to let everybody who's here be able to introduce themselves so that you guys have a sense of who's present. We have 1 or 2 additional people who should be joining us in the next few minutes. We'll make sure that they introduce themselves before they start to join the conversation, just as a level set. So I introduced myself, Stacy Rutland, founder of Income Movement, but I want to make sure that everybody else has an opportunity as well. So we'll go ahead and just go around the horn, start with Giselle. Do you want to introduce yourself to the community?
Hello, everybody. I'm Giselle Huff. I'm the president and founder of the Gerald Huff Fund for Humanity.
Awesome. Thank you, Giselle. Rennie?
Hi, good evening, everyone, and thanks for joining us this evening. I'm Rennie Sogod, the producer of Inherent Good, which is a documentary about universal basic income that's out on most digital platforms right now. Thanks for having us, Stacy.
Cece, how about you?
Hi, yes, my name's Cece Hall, and I'm with Humanity Forward, focused on operations and organizing. Thank you for inviting me. I'm very excited to be here.
Awesome. Liam?
Yes, thank you, Stacy. Great to meet all of you. Great to see all of you here. My name is Liam DeClivelo. I run the advocacy operation at Humanity Forward, trying to work with some of the other good people here on this call to take the ideas that we all care about to the halls of Congress. Thanks so much, Stacy, for having us.
Awesome. And then Anna?
Hi, everyone. My name is Anna Aurelio. I run the Federal Legislative Campaign for Economic Security Project Action, and we're trying to win as much direct cash payments as we possibly can.
Awesome. So it's lovely to have you all. I get to see you all each week, but I love seeing all of you together in one place. And really happy to have so many different organizations that are working in different parts of the movement represented here. I think it's awesome. I want to, I'm going to share my screen for a minute so people can see some things. I try to stay away from PowerPoints and things because it can be some mind-numbing experiences in the digital space, but it can also be helpful to sometimes be kind of grounded. So I'm going to just share so you guys can see the different kind of topics or areas that we're going to cover in the conversation today, and then we'll just dive right in. So a lot of what we've been working on together collectively as a group of organizations fighting for basic income really has been a concentrated effort in what we think of as kind of the first 100 days of the Biden-Harris administration. Some of this definitely, kicked off around the end of last year and into early January as kind of the election results were finalized and the Georgia election happened. We were certainly kicking off some of these efforts a little bit before the first 100 days of the Biden administration, but it's a good way for us to think about where we are right now, what's active, and what's going to kind of continue through these first few months of the year, and talk a little bit more about the progress that we've made and what some of the next upcoming actions and events and things are that are part of this first 100 days. And then, like I said, towards the end of the last third of the conversation, we'll be really thinking beyond this first 100 days. What is the next series of events and actions together that we want to take as a community? So for the first 100 days, things really fall into three different categories. One is the congressional pressure for recurring stimulus checks. And we're going to start here. There's certainly, over the last couple of weeks, for those of you who have joined us for the different weekly State of the Movement meetings, you know that there's been some really exciting developments over the last couple of weeks. We want to make sure, specifically around the different stimulus packages and also some of the work that's happening now for the recovery legislation. And so we'll start there because it's just so top of mind. But if at the same time, the second effort that we've been spending a lot of time as a movement on are pilots and local coalition building. So we'll spend some time there looking at and understanding what's happened with SEED and the Stockton economic empowerment demonstration results that just came out, the first year results that came out last week, that I'm sure many of you have had a chance to read lots of articles and heard lots of interviews with Michael Tubbs and others talking about kind of what those results mean. But we'll look at some other pilots that have run or are up and running as well. And then for the third, we'll focus on what is the role of taking all of this energy what are we going to be doing to kind of expand it to the larger basic income fight that we have in front of us, and the marathon that we really are in the midst of. We're kind of sprinting right now because there's so much time sensitive efforts and opportunities in front of us. But of course, we also want to make sure that we're never taking our eye off the ball of how do we get a federal basic income passed. And so we'll spend a little time in that space as well. And that piece will definitely lead us into where does the community want us to go around events and things like that in the spring and summer. Okay, so let's go ahead. I'm going to stop sharing now. And let's go ahead and start to dive into the first topic, which is the recurring stimulus checks legislation. And Anna and Liam and Giselle are all going to share some things here, but we're going to start with Anna, and she's going to be able to help you guys understand some of the work together. Some of this will sound very familiar to you because you guys were involved in some of the grassroots efforts that helped fuel some of the work, but she'll be able to give you a sense of overall where we're at and some of the key things the Economic Security Project has been doing in the space.
Great. Thank you so much, and great to see everyone. Again, my name is Anna Aurelio. I run the federal team for Economic Security Project Action, and my team is in charge of winning. So Economic Security Project, we're working to build economic power for all Americans. You'll hear from Madeline Naley later on the work that we do with income, especially pilot programs. But our job on the federal campaign team is try to push Congress to surf the wave of public demand for basic income that everyone has been building. And so we're trying to push the envelope as far as we can. So this is an incredible evening to be talking to all of you because, as you all know, today the House of Representatives passed the American Rescue by a vote of 220 to 211. Awesome. After the Senate passed it, also awesome. And that is Joe Biden's big down payment on economic rescue, right? Immediate relief for the country that he said he was going to do. And again, I don't want to tell how close this gets us to our goal of a basic income, but I do want people to take a moment and celebrate and recognize some of the amazing progress that this package represents. So a couple of things to keep in mind. One is that the overall package is $1.9 trillion. It's probably not as much as it should have been, but we were talking about it today. And, you know, the Democrats who usually are so afraid of deficits and spending, we didn't hear a single complaint from any Democrats about that. So the fact that the country needed a big investment and the majority of the Congress and the White House was willing to actually go big, that's actually really huge and important. And part of that is driven by people's understanding that they need cash in their pockets, and the direct cash payments that they've gotten, not enough and not frequently enough. But I want to say in March of last year, people got $1,200. In December, they got $600. This bill will deliver $1,400, and I'll go into some details about who's eligible and how many more people will get it. But one check is a one-off, 2 checks is a trend, 3 checks starts to be a pattern. And what we're socializing the notion that by giving people unconditional direct cash payments, they can the agency and independence and the freedom to spend it on the things that they think are most necessary. And that ends up being actually incredibly powerful, both for their own finances and for the economy. And so we're starting to really do this experiment on a large scale with these direct cash payments. And I think that's what's come home to roost. We know from polling that the cash payments are the most popular of the package. We know that it helped win the election in Georgia, right? Because it was pretty clear that if the Democrats won, we get another package, and if the Republicans, probably not to be too partisan, but let's call it what it is. And so this is a pretty amazing moment in time where the notion of direct cash payments, where it might have been a twinkle in many of our eyes and we were trying to push incremental policies, where this has become really a powerful force in American politics, and for people who are decision makers. So I think we should take a moment and celebrate the fact that there's additional direct cash payments in this package. Not only that, but it covers now mixed status families, which weren't in the first package, and it covers children with Social Security numbers whose parents might not have Social Security numbers, and it covers older dependents for the first time as well. So that's pretty important. The second thing I'll say is people should pay attention to the fact that it also contains a pretty massive expansion of the child tax credit and makes it fully refundable, which means that people that were completely locked out of this tax credit for years, while families that made up to $400,000 a year could get $2,000 per kid of child tax credit, families that made under $11,000 got less, and families that made under $2,500 got zero. So this bill actually stops that. It makes it fully refundable, so people at the bottom end of the income scale will actually get the credit refunded to them, and it expands the credit and makes it, most importantly, advanced and monthly, so that people can smooth out their incomes over time, which we all know as basic income advocates, that's a very, very important tool for tackling poverty. So that's only a one-year program, but it will cut child poverty in half for the year that it's in effect. And so that's pretty groundbreaking, because it creates sort of an income floor, a basic income for kids, which is super important. So these are important pieces. There's also some expansions of the earned income tax credit. And all told, if you add up the three checks, the child tax credit and the earned income tax credit, what we're seeing over the past year is $1 trillion of direct cash payments going out to the public. So again, that's groundbreaking. It's a moment to celebrate. And the impact of this in this year is that the poverty rate, which the Urban Institute 0.7%, will go down this year to 8.8% because of these cash payments and also unemployment insurance. So that's huge. That's massive. So that's where we are right now. That's awesome. Time to celebrate. And as activists, we know there's always more to do. So what we need to do now is we need to ride this wave and say the public demands it. You know it's popular, you know it's important, you know it's powerful. We need to make sure that we get recurring checks, ongoing checks until the economy recovers. We need to make sure as many people are translating that into a call for just a full-on guaranteed income. And we should make this child tax credit monthly expansion and refundability. We should make that permanent. That shouldn't just be a one-year one-off. We should make that permanent. And all of these things are going to take hard work. But again, now that people have gotten used to getting this, it's going to be very hard to take it away from them, right? And so all of the work that you're all doing to really both talk about the impacts that this has on the ground and weigh in with your local electeds, and I'm sure people are going to go into more detail on that, that is super, super important. One of the things that we're right now in Congress to sort of set the table for the next series of legislations, because after this bill gets signed into law, which is probably going to be in the next day or so, we know that the president is putting together his recovery plan. They want that to be about infrastructure and stimulus, and I think we need to build an economic infrastructure for this country that works better for people. We had the most uneven, regressive recession in history, and we need to make sure that the recovery is not the most unequitable recovery in history, which right now, as people know, Black and brown people are disproportionately affected by COVID. They're disproportionately unemployed and affected in terms of loss of income. So we need to make sure that we build back better economically. And so to that end, and thanks to folks who actually organized in Oregon and delivered petitions to Senator Wyden, Senator Wyden, who's chair of the Finance Committee, is leading a letter that says, look, we don't need to go through the drama of the last year where people had to wait 8 months in between bills to get direct payments and unemployment insurance ran out. He said, we ought to have automatically stabilize unemployment insurance and direct payments tied to economic conditions so that Congress doesn't have to act. When the economy starts to look bad, we turn on the checks, we turn on expanded unemployment, and those keep going until the economy starts to recover. We should do that automatically. And so he's leading that letter. We've got 16 senators on so far. That's a letter to President Biden saying, if you want to truly build back better, this is the kind of support that you need to put in. Harness the power of cash and do it automatically. So that's my update of the amazing moment that we're able to celebrate today and the challenge that lies ahead of us.
Awesome. Thank you, Anna. I love hearing you tie it all together and able to like give that larger strategy. And also, I know you've been working at this for a long time. And so I think it is a shared moment of celebration across all of the different kind of strata of the movement, this kind of culmination that we're experiencing right now. And so really, really excited to have this be the moment that we're having this quarterly meeting, because I think our last quarterly meeting is when we were talking about how can we help harness all of this together, and what does post-election look like, and all the infrastructure that we need to get in place to be ready for when Biden enters the administration and when the new Congress kicks off. What do we have to have in place? And so much of that work in November and December has really laid the groundwork for us to be able to do the work that's happened over the last 8 to 10 weeks. So just phenomenal. And I want to hand it over to Giselle for a few minutes to talk a little bit about the work that Fund for Humanity and has been doing in this space as well, the kind of lobbying and kind of building of champs on the Hill, and then we'll have Liam chime in.
So I'm going to get more into the nitty-gritty. First of all, I want everyone to know that Fund for Humanity is a one-woman office. You're looking at her. But I have a lot of help. And one of the things that I want to emphasize when I speak to you is how important it is to collaborate, coordinate, and have everybody work together. So the mission of the Fund for Humanity is to raise awareness of UBI and to bring about its understanding, acceptance, and implementation. So those are the three things that I use we because even though I'm all alone, I work with so many different people. So I will use the pronoun we. The last thing, the implementation, is this segment of our conversation. And in that respect, when I saw what was going on the Hill, even though I'm a nonprofit, I would opted for the H distinction so that I'm able to do some lobbying. And the fund hired a very well placed, long-time lobbyist in Washington, who was actually the right-hand man of President Johnson. So you see how far back he goes, and who can pick up the phone and call, Wyden and Pelosi and so on. So it was very clear to me that that investment on our side would be useful in tying together the efforts both that Anna is, just described, and that Liam will be getting into as far as the part that he played. And so you need to know that every weekday for 15 minutes, the Barnes people, Liam and Anna, spend 15 minutes on the phone going over the strategies and what's going on the Hill in order to get all of the things that Anna described done. And to me, that is, in order to get where we want to go, what the last segment of our conversation is going to be, we have to build a movement. And a movement is everybody working together and also looking out for opportunities wherever they arise. So I'm pass it on to Liam, who's going to give you more of the overview. You have to unmute.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate it, Giselle. Thank you. Stacey, am I good to go? I didn't know if you want to say anything between. Okay, cool. Great. Well, Giselle, thank you. And everyone, I'll be quick. I really appreciate, like I said earlier, getting to see all of you and have all of you here, I wanted to say a few things. So first of all, there's just as you heard already, as you've gotten a chance to hear, the people who, the groups here who I get to work with most closely, which is the Economic Security Project, the Fund for Humanity, and the Income Movement, all just tremendous groups. And it makes it so, and I would hope that they would, I think that they feel the same way, that, and I hope this is the same way for everyone on this call, that the fight is always difficult, but to wake up every day and know that we're in the foxhole with each other makes it, what makes it possible. And so I really am so grateful. It truly is every definition of the term team effort. That's the first thing. The second thing I wanted to bring up was a little bit about Humanity Forward and what our work has been in this, and what we're looking at now, kind of building on some of what Anna and Giselle just said. We were really pleased to see, I think I think there still is yet opportunity for this. We've been really pleased to see the opportunity for bipartisan support on this issue. The big, huge successes in the package that Anna talked about, obviously that was passed on a party line vote. It was all, virtually every Democrat voted for it. Virtually every Democrat voted for it. Every Republican voted against it. But that said, you notice not one Republican, not one elected Republican, not one of these members who voted against this package are trashing the checks, because they know how overwhelmingly popular that is. There were even a number of Republican members who put forward plans like alternative COVID relief plans, which some of which actually expanded the amount of money they're proposing to go to the checks, because they know how overwhelmingly popular, effective, and direct that portion is. And so on this issue, we have something that's not only bold, but incredibly popular across the spectrum. We were really excited to kind of initiate a sort of help pull together a new bipartisan coalition back in December. We've talked about this before, so some of you have heard about this. There was a bipartisan bill that was assembled in December, led by Congresswoman Lisa Blunt Rochester from Delaware, and Congressman David McKinley, who's a Republican from West Virginia, two people with very different life backgrounds, very different political ideologies. They came together, they led this bill because they recognized it was good for their districts. And 12 Republicans and 12 Democrats joined them, and they advocated for those checks to be included in that package. Looking forward to what Anna talked about, what we're laser focused on is trying to just get more people on that same bus, more people on that same coalition on both sides of the aisle, in both the Senate and the House. And we're now entering a period. I think this is the next, like Anna said, this whole last year has been a huge advancement for this issue, and have been a huge series of successes of which everyone here has played in which everyone here has played a role. Now, as we hopefully, fingers crossed, I know we're all hoping to be out of this national nightmare as soon as possible. And then hopefully this big package will be a part of moving us in that direction very quickly. And so what that will mean is that it'll be an opportunity and a challenge, I think, for all of us here. And it's something that Anna and I are dealing with every day. A challenge for us to start making the case to legislators for direct cash relief and direct recurring checks, direct cash payments, that is not just in the context of the pandemic, right? But it's in the context of some of the big problems that we all care about, many of which have been accelerated by COVID that Anna touched on, whether it's the racial income gap, or workers who've been automated out of their job, or women who've been pushed out of the workforce at 4 times the rate of men, uncompensated caretakers. You can just go down the list. And we've seen by the numbers already that the direct cash payments are arguably one of the most effective things at tackling a ton of those problems that are they're not going to go vanish the second that COVID goes away. And so we're starting to build out that case for COVID in the context, or checks in the context of a post-COVID America, and the challenges that we're still all going to face, and how we can, to use Biden's term, build back better. So we're going to keep making the case, but and I know this is going to get discussed later on in the agenda, all the ways that everyone here on this call plugs into those efforts. I can tell you, as someone who's on these Zoom calls meeting with the staffers, and I'm sure Anna would agree with this, having the active support and voice of people from the grassroots, the grass tops, from the states and districts of these members, it genuinely does make a difference. Most of these people, we can go in there and we can make a smart argument or help, to push them to get something on board. But if they know that, if they've heard from people from their state or from their constituency, it makes all the difference in the world. And I know you guys are already doing that, and there's more of that to come. I'll end there. Really much appreciated. Thank you, Stacy.
Awesome. Thank you, Liam. Was everybody able to, Liam, you speak so fast. I'm like,
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
it's
so
awesome.
excited, and then-
No, it's awesome. I'm like, man, your brain can like not only like move that fast, you know, thought wise, but it can come out like clearly and
Sorry.
succinctly. No, it's great.
I'm so excited to be here, and I feel bad about
Good.
taking up too much time, so that I cram it in. So I
That's
hope you all
good.
can understand what I was saying. One quick thing I forgot to mention, actually, really quickly, was to the point of the grassroots. I wanted to particularly shout out the research and outreach team, both from the volunteers who are working with Humanity Forward and the Income Movement, to help recruit constituents to help participate in these meetings with senators. Some people have said, like, oh, when you're advocating for cash relief or basic income in these meetings, we're like lobbyists for the people, you know, as opposed to being lobbyists for, like, you know, the bad things, or the people's lobbyists. And but what's even better than that is just bringing, you know, the people directly from those states directly to talk to their members. And so anyway, I just want to thank the volunteer teams who are setting that up, because I know a lot of work goes into that. That's all. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, Liam. And I wanted to, and that's a really good segue into a couple of last pieces, specifically on the congressional kind of coalition building, this kind of theme and topic. One thing, remind everybody, if you have questions for anything that Giselle, Liam, or Anna has gone over, get it in the Q&A section. If it's something that warrants a a verbal response, we'll hand it back over to them in a minute. But also, as you see, a question was posed on and she was able to answer pretty quickly in text also. So we'll make sure that your questions get answered, as many of them as possible. Throw them in there. But to Liam's point, and Giselle and Anna, you guys all, you know, really did a great job of painting the larger picture of like all of the different components that go into the work that you guys are doing, and that the grassroots is such an integral part of that. And so so the constituent meetings is something that is absolutely a big part of what we're putting a lot of energy into now. And so people who are on this meeting right now, if you've been on other meetings or are getting emails from Humanity Forward or Income Movement, you're seeing that this has been an area where we've been putting a lot of energy and work. To take it back just kind of one step back, we've been doing quite a bit of work on the grassroots side to whether it's letter writing campaigns, phone call campaigns, to Congress members, or even letter to the editor campaigns. There's been a lot that you guys have been doing on the ground every day to make sure that people, that Congress members in particular, but really any elected officials and community members are understanding kind of the need for this, telling the stories that are so important and powerful that you're experiencing or that your community is experiencing during COVID, and why direct cash and monthly cash is such an important piece. On February 4th, we delivered, we had kind of a day of action where we delivered petition signatures from a change.org petition. More than 2 million people have signed that petition. The petition asked for Congress members to support $2,000 a month stimulus checks, effectively emergency basic income during COVID, in order for us to make sure that that the people on the ground have the funds that they need to take care of the most basic expenses. We went ahead and delivered those signatures to 15 different senators, and Anna mentioned this kind of directly. What ended up happening out of that is a lot of contact was made, obviously, between Senate offices and constituents on the ground who were delivering those signatures. We actually, rather than just doing signatures, we delivered them as past due invoices. So an invoice that had the name of the constituent on it and the months, the number of months that they have been past due, and making those payments to the people. So we delivered thousands and thousands, boxes and boxes of these past due invoices, which was powerful in its kind of symbolism, and certainly allowed us to have some great conversations with senators, and to get some local press coverage, which was really an important part of continuing to make sure that elected officials and community people in all these different communities understand that there's people out there fighting for this right now. But of course, one of the important components of that, when you're delivering the voice and the will of the people to senators, they want to have a conversation. And we were able to have a conversation, like Anna mentioned, with Senator Wyden that their offices were closed. So they said, let's have a meeting where you can deliver the petitions and where we can have a conversation. We did that. We invited Anna to join, and she was able to start having a conversation with them about this idea of economic stabilizers. Prior to really this conversation, Senator Wyden had mostly been thinking about unemployment insurance as economic stabilizers, really hadn't been as open as we would have liked for recurring cash, recurring stimulus checks. And so that moment and the moment of bringing constituents in to voice, tell their stories and talk about what's going on the ground is the moment that that the door opens a little bit to be able to have a larger conversation about policy, about opportunities. And so, within a couple of weeks, that started a conversation with Anna and Wyden's team to lead into the letter that he's now written to Biden. And because he hasn't been, from the beginning, he was not a champion of recurring checks. Something interesting happens when an important kind of Senate leader brings something new to the table, and so we've seen more people, more senators signing and joining this letter to Biden, asking for recurring cash to be part of the stabilizers, people who haven't before been willing to kind of support that. And so it's really an exciting and important moment. 5 different chairs of committees have signed it. This is a lot of really important key leaders that are not necessarily considered like the classic progressive senators are joining this call in a very public way, and that's very exciting. That leads into the constituent meetings that we want to be doing. I think that if you've been part of some of our other conversations, you know that we are building kind of coalitions of people on the ground to have conversations with senators. If you're interested in being part of that, Chelsea's going to drop her email in here and let us know, because we'd love to bring you into those conversations. And you can either be somebody who has a direct conversation with constituents, or you can help with the organizing and all of the work that goes into setting those up. So even if you're like, oh, I feel nervous about having a conversation, or I'm not sure that that's the right place for me to be, you can still be participating in this and helping it make it happen. We also are doing, social media is a pretty powerful tool in this whole bag of tricks, as well as we really want to, as we continue to do the work. So we're doing swarming. We're thinking about ways to not only do the stick, but also the carrot. So how do you thank senators who are putting themselves out there and doing important work, publicly endorsing and supporting recurring stimulus checks? Swarming on social media, on Twitter, which basically means a bunch of us go and in a very concentrated time thank somebody for the work that they're doing. We did that with Wyden the moment that the letter became public. A bunch of us went onto Twitter and thanked Wyden, pushed that pretty hard, and let him know, and his aides, who are probably sifting through that on a regular basis, let them know that we see it and that we value it, and that his work is important to the larger movement. So if you want to be part of that, also reach out to Chelsea. She's going to be able to get you kind of in the pipeline to help with some of those kind of positive supporting mechanisms we have in place. And in general, we have bailoutthepeople.com. That is a place where all the actions that you can take are in one place. They're always updated, whether it's sign a petition, write a letter to your Congress member. They're all there, and it's an easy way for you to be able to, in just a couple of minutes, be able to have a pretty large impact on the work that we're doing. We're in there all the time, updating the language of the letters to be applicable to wherever we are in the legislation and all those things. So you don't have to be paying attention every day to the latest and greatest wins that we're having. All of that's going to be actually in each of these actions, so you can see and make sure that what you're sending to your Congress member has the latest information in it. Okay. This is the last call for questions. Anything else that anyone wants to ask before we move on to pilots and coalition building? Okay. I don't see anything new in the Q&A. Oh, yep, but Anna's already on it. Sweet. Okay, cool. Well, then let's go ahead and move on to the next section. And I know some people are going to have to bounce out. And so if you do need to go, please, feel free to do so. Thank you so much for taking the time out to share all this amazing work. And we will see you all soon. Okay, we're gonna now go to, I'm gonna share my screen. We're gonna bring in well, it's not a PowerPoint, so at least it doesn't look as horrible as a PowerPoint, but it is a slide deck. I'm gonna bring up the slide deck real quick just to share a few things. So when it comes to pilots and local coalition building, we're gonna spend just a few minutes on SEED and focusing on the Stockton Economic Empowerment Demonstration and some of the important information that's come out around that. We're also going to spend a little bit of time on the support mechanisms that are in place for pilots. Obviously ones that are happening with Mayors for a Guaranteed Income, and that coalition is important, but also, as you all know, because you all are deep in the grassroots community, and many of you have been on the weekly State of the Movement meetings where people have come on and said, hey, I'm interested in doing a pilot, or I don't have a mayor that's supporting this, but I have somebody a funder who maybe is. So we want to spend a little bit of time talking about the community of practice, and Madeline will be on from Economic Security Project to talk a little bit more about the mechanisms or the kind of tools and support that are in place for pilots. As we know, like pilots are, I was gonna say all the rage, they're really pretty like there's a lot of energy happening right now around pilots, which is incredibly exciting because it helps us build the data sets that are going to help hopefully make the arguments for Congress members who need that kind of evidence for us to really get to get federal legislation passed in the long term. And then we'll also hear from Giselle, who can talk a little bit about what it was like to spearhead a local pilot and the larger implication of local pilots as on kind of state and larger levels. So we're going to talk about those. I'm going to leave the slide deck up for just a minute to cover a couple of components of SEED. So like I said at the top of, I think I might have shared this at the top of the hour, Cameron Burns, who helps lead the Mayors for a Guaranteed Income effort, tried to make it, but he got called away at the last minute. Last week, the SEED program shared their findings, kind of a summary report of the first year findings for the first year. The SEED program was a 24-month program. Originally it was going to be 18 months, but then with COVID, they extended it. And the first year, kind of pre-COVID, that first year, they've done the synthesis of the research and data out of that study and presented it last week. If you guys have been paying attention to the news in this space, this will be old school to you, because there's been lots of amazing interviews with Michael Tubbs and different mayors that are part of Mayors for a Guaranteed Income as they've rolled out some of this. But I think it's important for just a minute to pause and like actually look at some of the data that's come out of this, because this is what's going to help us as a community, and ultimately when it comes to candidates who are running to be able to make the case, but also legislators who want to create and build legislation that includes basic income. The data that's coming out of the pilots, and that's going to continue to come out of the Mayors for a Guaranteed Income pilots, are really powerful, and they're going to help us dispel a lot of the myths around what happens when you give cash to people. So just a couple of things that came out of this, and there's a ton of articles. I think that we're dropping some into the chat here, but The Atlantic has a great article that goes pretty deep by Annie Lowry, who's just an amazing writer, but she also is author of Just Give People Cash, I think is the name. Give People Cash.
Money. Give people money.
Give people money, thank you. So she wrote a great piece in The Atlantic about the results. NPR has a really great piece as well that highlights a lot of the stories of individuals who have gone through and telling that very important story component. But here's just at a high level some of the data that's come out of this. Probably we all know when we're having a conversation with, whether it's, you know, our aunt or some, you know, colleague at work or whatever it is, some of the biggest questions that people ask when you say, hey, I think there should be this thing called a universal basic income where everybody gets, you know, a guaranteed income floor. Often the first question is, how are you going to make, you know, aren't people just going to get lazy and not want to work? And so some of the findings out of SEED really fly in the face of this and help from a data perspective dispel this myth. So you can see here from an employment perspective, treatment and control. So treatment is the group of people who received the $500 a month, which is what SEED was, what the amount for the guaranteed income demonstration was for Stockton. Baseline is where they were at the beginning, and then where they were 1 year in. And you can see that the control group, the people who did not receive it, did see a mild increase in full-time employment. But you actually see the people who were participants of the program had a significantly larger, more than 2 times larger increase in full-time employment. And really a lot of this boils down to, you can see the bullet here that talks a little bit about it, but that $500 a month really can actually remove some of the core barriers of what it takes to look for, be able to successfully find and secure full-time employment. All the kinds of things like goal setting, risk taking, that's part of that, is what that $500 a month kind of helped them achieve. And there's lots more about this. We're not going to, like I said, there's lots of really great articles out there. Tomorrow, Mayor Tubbs, Michael Tubbs and Andrew Yang are having a town hall tomorrow evening. So if you're fans of both of them, that might be a really great conversation to be a part of. That will certainly be an opportunity. I think you can go to Andrew Yang's campaign website to be able to see that, or onto either of their Twitters. It'll be on there of how to participate in that conversation. There you'll get a lot more of the richness from this. Of course, the income volatility, I don't think anybody here is surprised by this, but that kind of core data point of, would you be able to pay for a $400 unexpected emergency expense without, you know, having to go borrow it or put it on a credit card? And prior to being a participant, 25% of people, whether they were those who were recipients or those that were part of the control group, only a quarter of those people could. And then you can see the huge jump that happens with the recipients 1 year in, and their ability to be able to weather these kinds of what really are kind of common. We call them unexpected emergency expenses, but they come so regularly that we know that, you know, month to month, there's something new that's a new quote unquote emergency that people have to try to figure out how to cover. And of course, when you look at these as a whole, especially the income volatility, there's nothing really surprising around this idea that the overall health and well-being of people who are participating and were able to receive the funds that they experience. So decreases in anxiety and depression, and the ability for people to focus on their own health, as well as the health and kind of well-being, you know, if they're caretakers of others, just to have a little bit more breathing room. Maybe they don't have to pick up the extra shift at work or take on some overtime to try to cover, you know, bills, spending more time on the things that are going to help give you the space to have some balance in your life. So these were some great findings. This is really exciting. It's an exciting moment for these findings to come out, because it's when it's at the same time that the legislation work is happening around why you should give people cash and why cash is so powerful. And so to have the 1.9 trillion passed and and the results of SEED happen within days of each other, and the shift that's happening right now towards recovery legislation and thinking about long-term recovery, and Wyden's letter asking Biden to include in that recovery legislation recurring cash as one of the stabilizers, as well as unemployment. Like there's this really an amazing kind of coming together of work here that's going to allow us to be that much more successful in swaying people that are ultimately get to control the purse strings right now of how we decide to dig ourselves out of the situation we're in economically. So very cool, very exciting. And that leads into, I want to introduce and bring up Madeline. I don't know if you share your video, if you're able to.
I am going to stay off video tonight. Okay. It is about 9 o'clock East Coast time, and I'm not going to lie, I'm in my pajamas. So
awesome.
Hi, everyone. I'm Madeline. I'm the Director of Guaranteed Income at the Economic Security Project, and I have the great pleasure of working closely with Anna, who you all just heard from. So as Anna said, she works to notch wins, to put cash in people's pockets right now. And I joined ESP in February of 2020. And I was brought on and I was told I didn't have to have any wins. I was there to provoke and legitimize this big idea that we were not going to win anytime soon around a federal guaranteed income. Obviously, a few things have changed since then, and I would like to think that I've been helpful in getting some of those wins on the table, but also really, again, about this blue sky idea. What is the world we're building to look like, and how do we do that by provoking those big ideas and building the champions like Mayor Michael Tubbs, like Dr. Aisha Nyandaro from the Magnolia Mothers Trust, who can be out there talking about this, evangelizing about this, because they've seen the effects in people's lives. So we at ESP partnered with Mayor Tubbs for SEED, and we were also very fortunate to work with him to launch Mayors for Guaranteed Income in June of this year to support other mayors in bringing on pilots. Obviously, that has been wildly successful with over 40 mayors on board now. And I feel like every time I turn around, there's another pilot launching. But it's still not capturing the full community. And Giselle was so thoughtful earlier, thinking about what really drives a moment to a movement is that collaboration and that communication. And so we've recognized that there needs to be a guaranteed income community of practice for folks who are not within the mayor-led demonstrations. So we're working on launching this. Again, we're calling it the very clever name of Guaranteed Income Community of Practice. And we are bringing together researchers and evaluators who focus on the pilots, as well as academics who kind of do more of the blue sky thinking or the modeling around guaranteed income. We have policymakers who are not mayors, so then don't fit into that bucket, but maybe are city council members or county commissioners who are either exploring or starting programs and pilots in their areas. We have policy advocates, organizers like Stacy and others who connect to this work in different ways. And then we have non-mayoral led demonstrations coming on board. So right now we are about to have our first convening, and we are building out this practice. It is to provide support for the demonstrations, but it is not a technical assistance provider in the same way that the Mayors for Guaranteed Income really is. I co-chair the community of practice with Aisha Nyandaro, and I really liked the way that she described it. Was we're providing a space for folks to come together and learn from one another. So we do have this website that Stacy's now put up, and on the resources page, we're starting to collect information from all over. So we have the curriculum, the What Works Cities learning sprint that we did with Mayors for Guaranteed Income. We have started collecting program design resources, and then we just have the any lit reviews that have been done, the the income maintenance experiments from the 60s and 70s and the research around that. So there's a lot of good information there, and we will continue to add to it. And again, we're really hoping that this community is learning and building with one another and moving from pilot to policy. So how do we take the data and the information that we're getting, marry it to the narrative shift that we need to move policy progress in this country, and then work together to create the world that we want. I can take a look and see if there are any questions or.
This is awesome. And while that's happening, I think let's hand it over to Giselle real quick. If you have any questions for Madeline, we can loop back, but I'd love for Giselle to kind of chime in on Fund for Humanity's experience and pilots. Some of kind of what you were alluding to, Madeline, around a non-mayor led pilot and what that was like, and a little bit of kind of where it's gone since that happened. Giselle?
Yeah, so this was taking advantage of an opportunity. I was introduced and had lunch with one of the supervisors of Santa Clara County, which is the Silicon Valley County. So it's quite well off. His name is Dave Cortese. And in the course of our lunch, we talked about UBI a lot, and we focused in on transitioning foster youth in Santa Clara County, a small group of people who didn't have the support systems that kids who not in the foster system have, and have to launch into life with nothing, and don't do very well. And all of the programs that are made available to them before they transition out are not enough to launch them properly. So we talked about this, and he decided to design and propose to his fellow supervisors a pilot for transitioning foster youth. Now, we had lunch in July of 2019, and in May of 2020, with COVID making it even more important, they actually voted on the program unanimously and committed $900,000 out of their budget. It's 72 kids, so it's a small program, in order to do this. And it was launched at the end of July. So 1 year from the time we had the conversation, just, he and his team and my participation, my small participation, we were able to, the program was launched. But the next thing that happened is that Dave Cortese was elected to the California State Senate, and is now putting out a bill for a statewide UBI for transitioning foster youth. So it's one step at a time, and it's all in the right direction. And it shows you that there's nothing that you can leave behind. Don't leave any stone unturned. Don't leave any conversation unfinished, because you never know and take calls, very important. Since then, I've taken 4 or 5 calls and connected other people who are doing similar programs to the people in Santa Clara. And, some of the programs that I directed them to the mayors, I directed them to the people who actually created the whole, the law in Santa Clara, and it's on my website, on Fund for Humanity website. There is a whole description of how all of this happened. So the potential is tremendous. No opportunity should be left behind. I mean, anytime something like this comes up, there are people like Madeline and, the people you've met and about, who are absolutely devoted, committed to helping anybody do this. I'm very excited about the community of practice, Madeline.
Yeah,
Thank you, Giselle. I'm very excited for your participation. And I just had a conversation with Melanie in Santa Clara yesterday, I believe, about the great expansive work they're doing. So yes, again, bringing folks to learn from one another and expand it. You know, one of the big questions that pilots confront is the intersection with other benefits and wanting to make sure that everyone is left better off, right? So needing to be really aware of that. And there are issues that youth get confronted with that adult pilots haven't grappled with before. So I think it'll be really important to have Santa Clara there talking to other pilots that are focused on providing youth and transition age youth with that stability that you mentioned.
that's excellent. And I think that, what for us, what this highlights, in addition to kind of the idea that together we're all finding ways to support the work that's being done, just to provide the tools, provide the best practices. But I think, and in addition to that, it's part of the kind of mission of Mayors for a Guaranteed Income, and we're certainly also seeing it with Giselle's pilot in Santa Clara, that local can have a huge state and potentially up the chain national impact. And so, and for us as grassroots organizers and grassroots activists, local feels much more doable. It feels much more tangible. It feels real. We might have closer relationships with the people, with our city council members or our mayors. And so I'm sharing here a view into the 100 Mayors for a Guaranteed Income project or campaign that we're working on. Income Movement is working on with Mayors for a Guaranteed Income, specifically to give us more and more opportunities of the kinds of things that we just have started to talk about. How do we get more people, more elected leaders at the local level to get engaged and involved and supporting of guaranteed income, whether it's pilots or just proposing and supporting guaranteed income at a local, state, or national level, being public, being advocates for building coalitions in cities, coalitions of support, whether it's small businesses and elected leaders, whatever it is. How do we kind of use the mechanisms of the local to get very kind of deep and tactical, and then help grow that out to the state level and to the federal level. And so the 100 Mayors for a Guaranteed Income campaign is specifically designed to be this marriage between grassroots efforts and coalition building at the local level to get us where, right now Mayors for a Guaranteed Income is at 40. And we want to, in the next several months, get to 100. So how do we do that? We build opportunities for local voters to be able to sign petitions to their mayors, for local business people to be able to sign open letters to their mayors, similar to the open letter that Wyden wrote for President Biden. This is how do we get key leaders, business leaders in cities to sign an open letter to their mayor saying, we believe in guaranteed income and we want you to join us in this effort, join us in this policy. And so you can see there's a lot of pins here. It's the beginning of the campaign. So if you go to, I'm sure somebody has dropped the link for this campaign in the chat. But what we really are focusing on right now is people who are interested in leading something in their community, reaching out to us and so that we can help support you, give you the tools, give you all the things that are important and useful for you to be able to feel like you're having success in your community. And building the kind of back end support mechanism for you guys to be able to activate, and connect with small businesses, connect to other organizations that might be working in this space in your communities, so that we can add more mayors, so that we can then empower more. If we can get concentrations of mayors in certain states, if they are a coalition that is having conversations with their governor, the state governors, or the state senators, these are all just really important opportunities for us to put our energy locally and have a really big, significant impact. So definitely let us know if you're interested. Carla is leading, Carla at Income Movement is leading this. She'll drop her email in, reach out to her and let her know if you're interested in participating. If your city's already on here, there's a petition already set up, and there's and if you want to get a little bit more involved beyond just signing a petition, you can. But there's lots of ways to kind of plug into this, whether it's ownership of the whole city, whether it's just helping reach out to your local business people, or connecting us to community members that you think could be powerful in the work that needs to be done in this space. So pretty wide variety of ways that you could plug in and help at this local level. In coordination with this, and I'm going to invite Rennie to kind of join in this conversation, we also are doing a targeted guaranteed income event series. And so this is very specifically, we're targeting different regions, regions where there's already some active mayors for a guaranteed income, but where there's also many mayors that are targeted here as part of our 100 mayors. So mayors that don't currently support guaranteed income, but that we're doing the work to try to nurture them towards supporting it. And so we really wanted to think about how could we have a strategic targeted event series that brings together a lot of the different coalition building that we are doing right now. And so this will include focusing on very specific regions. You can see a little example of what an event might look like. These are kind of our targets right now, the date for it, the region that we're targeting, and then who we would invite to be panelists in that conversation, and the theme that we would be focusing on together collectively for that event series or that event. And so I wanted to invite Rennie because this is really the beginning of this conversation actually happened, I think, like maybe back in September or October.
Yeah. Last fall.
Yeah.
It was like something that we were dreaming up, that we wanted to partner with Mayors for a Guaranteed Income and be able to offer the film as a tool for them to, to one, start the conversation with their constituents, but then offer, a live sort of panel discussion afterwards with either some of the thought leaders in the film, but also thought leaders here today that are probably listening in, and, bring in the mayors. And now we have, reps that are championing guaranteed income, which is super exciting. So we wanted to offer again the film for another impact series. And so we're hoping that we can launch this targeting the end of March. And it's going to be, like Stacey said, very regional. And, I'm excited. I'm super excited for this and for the film to be able to be used in this way. We also recently had a conversation, our team had a conversation with an organization in Gainesville, Florida called Community Spring. And I think that might be an organization that's familiar to MGI. And so they are working on a pilot program right now that's focusing on people transitioning out of incarceration, which I think is one of the most marginalized communities. And it's not something that we talk a lot about in the UBI sphere. So I'm excited that we have an opportunity later down the road this year to partner up with them potentially, or to invite some of I think they're going to have a fellow or participant who's going to be leading that program at some point. And once that person gets ramped up, we can start bringing them into the panel discussion of someone who is living in an impacted community, but also working to help design and implement this pilot program in Gainesville. So that's really exciting. And, unfortunately, I wouldn't be able to, the timing didn't work out to include them in this series, but in the future, look out for Community Spring, their name. They're doing incredible work in Gainesville, and I hope our community can support their efforts there. And anything else that I'm missing to this event series?
I think that's good. I can add a couple of things, and we'll see if that's prompts other things to come to mind for you. I think one of the things, in many ways, the Inherent Good, and I'm sure a lot of the people that are on this meeting have been able to have a chance to watch Inherent Good. I think I've watched it now maybe 4 times. I still cry through different parts of it. It still hits me. There's just some really important stories there and just told in such a kind of beautiful, honest way that I think it's an important tool. And it's why we really have thought about this as the event series as a regional piece, as well as focusing on specific themes. So in the survey, for those of you who maybe just took it or took it, a couple days ago, and we sent it out to the email list, our kind of members list, some of the feedback, some of the stuff we asked you guys is, what are you wanting to learn more about or hear more about? What kinds of topics do you want to have about events and things like that? And you'll see that here, when we're thinking about the themes, we've actually integrated some of the ideas from the community that you guys think is powerful and important for us to continue to do the kind of knowledge building of together. But with a twist here, this is an opportunity for us to also think about how can we get regions of mayors and leaders activated and community members activated. So even though these are regional, it doesn't mean that they're only for people of that region. It just means that we're concentrating on mayors and Congress members from those regions to talk about a very specific theme or topic, and that we're going to be doing some special additional outreach to community members, to small business owners, to other mayors that aren't current supporters, to students at universities in these areas, to invite them to participate in a regional conversation, to be able to hear from some of the leaders in their area who are proponents and supporters of direct cash and guaranteed income, to help widen, help grow the grassroots community, help grow the community in these specific areas. So you can see, the first one at the end of the month, March is Women's History Month, and so having a women's and kind of gender equity conversation specifically, and targeting the Upper Midwest region. We have several different mayors in Wisconsin and Michigan who are currently supporting, are part of Mayors for a Guaranteed Income. We have Representative Rashida Tlaib, who's proposed one of the most comprehensive and exciting pieces of COVID response legislation, the ABC Act, specifically designed to make it so that the cash gets into the hands of the people that it's intended for. Representative Cori Bush, who's a huge UBI advocate and has talked very poignantly and honestly about being a domestic violence survivor and what it means to be able to have kind of economic independence as a key component of the ability to leave an abuser and be in safe spaces. We've built relationships with Free From, which is an organization that is specifically focusing on the nexus of economic, how to build systems and programs for economic independence, to make sure that domestic violence survivors have an opportunity to find kind of freedom and autonomy and safety away from their abusers. So a really great opportunity for us to talk about how income, kind of really the overlap here around income, security, and autonomy, and how people who are actually trying to build legislation are thinking about that right now, and people who have experienced what it's like to be at the mercy of systems and programs that don't consider how to get money into the hands of the intended recipients, to talk more about that. And of course, we know basic income is a very important tool and for some of that work. And then you can see some of the others. In California, we would focus on why cash matters and thinking about reimagining the social safety net, bringing in Mayor Brown from Compton, Katie Porter, Representative Katie Porter, Representative Ro Khanna, Annie Lowry. There's lots of opportunities there. And then really focusing on the intersectionality of race, class, and income, and what's going on in the economic justice space. And really thinking about and this is something that actually that came directly out of several of you in that survey, said that you really wanted to kind of lean hard into understanding the role of social justice and economic justice, and not shying away from the role of race and ethnicity and racism, and what the kind of economic impact of that, and what the role guaranteed income could play in helping address some of that. You know, obviously guaranteed income or UBI is not a silver bullet, but can have an important impact. So these are the topics we know we want to do. Taking this targeted way at focus is going to allow us to make sure that each of these has different themes. So whether you're somebody in Portland like me, even though my region isn't represented, each of these are 3 topics that I know are going to be powerful and important. I can still participate. But then also these are regions where we want to make sure we get stronger and bring people kind of across partisan lines, across different coalitions to get on the guaranteed income, get on the basic income. Train with us and continue to do the work and fight. Okay, so that's a really good kind of segue into the last piece, which is, what are we going to do next? And what do you guys want to do next? This event series is the beginning of integration. Giselle, what do you want to say?
Are you skipping my segment?
No.
Oh.
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, the last part of this presentation is about how do we keep the movement going per se, as opposed to these various expressions of it that we've heard about. And in that respect, I just wanted to share with you one thing, first of all, to say, when Stacy was mentioning all of the articles that have been written about the SEED study, in February, in April of 2019, the Fund for Humanity started the Basic Income Today website, which is a daily news website for all UBI news, all of the articles. There's at least two articles a day that are posted on that website. Chelsea, you could possibly give the link to that, please. And Scott Sentence is the editor. So if you want to stay, abreast of everything that's going on with UBI, not only in the United States but all over the world, that is a news site. And I was fortunate enough to be offered a pro bono promotion of UBI, which was a 30-second video, which I hope you all had an opportunity to see. Thank you very much, all the people who promoted it on Twitter and elsewhere, and certainly Stacy and all of the people involved in Income Movement who were very, very much involved in that. But mind you, this is a PSA that appeared on 10 major media outlets, and the results were just incredible. There were a total of 7 million plus people who saw the video, the impressions, and 5,381,000 people actually looked at the video in its entirety, which was a 60% completion. So think about that. Somebody's on a website, a video flashes in front of them. 60% of the people whose eyes saw that actually clicked on the video and watched it for the whole 30 seconds. That's the people who did the professionals who were involved in this project were amazed. It was the best kind of PSA response they've seen. So I wanted to let you know that, because Stacy and I met and started working together in July of 2019 to put together the first march. And I can't believe how far we've gotten. And I wanted to make sure that all the people who are working so hard to make this happen understand that in addition to what we heard at the beginning of this presentation, this movement is here to stay.
You're here. It
Yes.
absolutely is. And if you have not had a chance, I think to watch the PSA, it's a strong, powerful, straightforward message of we've built this economy and we are the economy, and our systems basically need to be in place to share the wealth of the economy that we've built. And that's what a UBI does. And so it's very much so designed for driving the conversation forward with people who may be landing on a more kind of middle America centrist or conservative perspective on how it is that on this kind of, pull yourself up by the bootstraps work, hard work. It means great pay kind of mantra that we hear a lot, that we also know is a fallacy, that there's a lot of people out there who are working far more than is healthy for anybody mentally or physically, and who are not getting ahead in any way, shape, or form, and that their systems, the system is working the way it has been designed to work right now, and we need to change the way it's designed. So that PSA is a super powerful tool that we're going to be able to keep really kind of utilizing and as we cast that wider net and grow the grassroots community. It's going to be a powerful hook to bring people into the next conversation that we can have with them around how the system works and how we can shift things. So super exciting. And yes, I can't, that data that came out around, where that PSA was landing and how many people actually just sat and watched through the whole thing. I'm sure everybody on this call is like, oh man, if I see a video pop up and I'm really just wanting to get to that news piece or whatever it is that I clicked on, like the first thing I do is just say skip ad, 10 seconds in, skip it. The fact that that more than half of people stuck around to watch the whole thing really helps demonstrate just how powerful it is, and how something as simple as a PSA can have a huge impact on growing the movement. So super exciting. We're going to find more and more ways to use that and make sure that we're leveraging everything, getting, squeezing every ounce out of that we can as we do this work together. So I think that that's a really good segue into how do we grow? What are the things that we focus on? How do we grow the movement? I'm going to share my screen real quick for just a minute around some of the things that came out of the survey at a high level, and then I'm actually going to share my screen and show you guys live the data that's been coming through. It looks like around 20 people that were on this call took the survey since we kicked things off. So we're up to, I think, 75 or 80 people have taken it, which is fantastic. That's excellent data to have. Let's dive in a little bit. So as we move forward with this, what we're going to do, technically this meeting was a 90-minute meeting and we're coming right up on the 90 minutes, but as it often happens with the quarterly meetings, we're going to go a little bit over. This is all going to be recorded, so if you have to bounce off, feel free. We're going to share this recording far and wide, and so you'll be able to catch anything that you missed. But this is where we would like to actually start to open things up in a conversation. I think this will be about 30 minutes, so we'll be very very thoughtful and targeted. But what we're going to do now moving forward is, as we start to pull up this data and look at it together, we are going to give an opportunity for you guys to actually join the conversation. So as we go, if you have something you want to say that you want to add to the conversation in the chat, if you say stack, just type in stack, that lets us know that you have something to kind of add to what's being discussed. I want us to be really thoughtful around how much we're participating and make sure we're giving lots of opportunities for different voices, especially if, you know, if you see like 6 stacks in a row and you're going to be somebody who adds, you know, add your piece, and then let's make sure everybody else has a chance to share before you come back around, just to be really thoughtful about voices. I'm going to start sharing, and then what's going to happen if you say stack, then you're going to be made into a panelist so that you can join the conversation. And so just know that if you want to have your video on, if you have your video on, it means you're going to be, the minute you get made into a panelist, you're going to be presented. So if you want to join the conversation but don't want to be visible, turn off your video, but your mic will be live and you can join. Okay, so before we actually start adding people as panelists, I just want to go through and share a couple of things that have come out of this at a high level, as some things to kind of respond to for y'all. So the first thing is, this is the third effort of what we're talking about, expanding the larger basic income movement. Giselle did a great job of kind of bridging that and talking about the PSA. There's kind of 3 things that we already have on the roadmap. What these things are, how they're defined, is the work that we want to do together with you guys. So, and there may be more that gets added, or we might change the way we think about doing these things based on what makes sense to the community. But we do have a few things that we're feeling pretty solid about, and they're here. So April and May, we want to start doing some Friday night movie nights. We think this is an opportunity for us to start to engage in some of the topics that people are hungering to be able to engage in, but also do it through a medium that is fun, that's thought-provoking, and also just the opportunity for us to just dive deeper into conversations that might be a little bit lighter or a little bit heavier, that might not be directly about basic income, but might have components of like how our systems work currently, how our economy works, things like that, and then be able to further the conversations about those movies and start to insert UBI into the conversation around that. So this is a great opportunity for us to have fun, hang out together, and potentially also invite people that we know might be experts in certain areas or have a little bit more information to join also, so that as we're having conversations after, we're kind of unpacking some things and getting into the weeds, which we all, I think almost everybody in this community loves to get in the weeds together. So let's do that. And let's use film as a way to dive into that. July and August, we know we're going to want to do a summer event series, and we've definitely gotten some feedback from you all around what this might look like. And then of course in September we have the 2021 Basic Income March. And so at a high level for the Friday night movie nights, these are some of the suggestions that you all came up with. I don't know if I spelled camp right, and so I'm sorry about that. If somebody wants to look it up and correct me, I realized that was one I was supposed to look up and I didn't. But here's some of the kinds of things that we could potentially watch together, right? They don't have to be documentaries. They can be. Obviously, Inherent Good, we've done this a few times, or we've watched Inherent Good and then we've had really thoughtful conversations afterwards. I love the idea of potentially having something where there's not a panel discussion afterwards, but just an open community conversation. I don't think that we've done that quite yet. I think we've always had some kind of panel discussion of experts after. So certainly we could add Inherent Good to this list. But you can see some of the lists here: Dear White People, Moneyball, Nomadland. These are all films that talk about the role of economics and how our system is set up in interesting ways. So they bring opportunities for kind of deeper conversations on some of the topics you guys have talked about. And then for the summer event series, some of what we've heard from you guys is kind of roundtable discussions and wanting to have something that is still in the virtual space. You guys have also started to talk about, I mean, this has been pretty pervasive, but the timing, we might, be able to spend more time in this area of trainings, and trainings maybe isn't exactly the right way to say it, but a lot of you have been talking about like, how can, what are the tools or the ways that we can make sure that we know how to talk about UBI to different kinds of people, that we have the tools to be able to kind of implement something that you want to do in your own community that doesn't necessarily fall into some of the stuff that's happening at the national level. How do you build coalitions in your community of organizations and people so that you're really just kind of building strong relationships where there's commonality around the work that you want to be doing and the work that others are doing. So these are things that we certainly could imagine being part of the event series. And then of course, we've also heard from you guys around the idea, like, could there be some kind of traveling creative show or something where there's artists and musicians and just like kind of cool, interesting things happening that are exploring UBI in interesting ways that can actually go from one city to the next, where it's bringing a bunch of local people together, but maybe there's one or two kind of key people or artists that travel to multiple locations to help kind of bring a cohesive narrative or a cohesive experience to the creative traveling shows. So those are some things that have kind of come out. I'd love to start inviting people who are doing STAC, and I've said STAC, into the conversation to hear more from you guys. And then I can also at a certain point just pull up bars and graphs of data from the survey so we can all look and see what everybody's been thinking about. But first, let's just maybe bring this into conversation.
I love all of these ideas, by the way. I'm just quick chime in. I love all of them.
Yay.
Our first person on STAC is Catherine Maloney.
Hey all, I just wanted to, because I know a lot of the panelists can't see each other, but there had been like a little chat that was happening where some of the Minnesotans were finding each other. And I just wanted to kind of advertise that Humanity First Movement is also here. And we're kind of the network that works with the state organizations. So if you go to our website, hfmovement.org, if you click on our map, you'll find the states that are, already have web presences and are active. And, otherwise you can just sign up directly with us nationally. But if you'd like to get something going locally, because we totally enjoy partnering with Income Movement and this whole host of people that you've seen here. But really what makes the difference is those kind of local communities that, when they're looking to find someone in Boise or they're looking to find someone in Miami, we just want to help foster that network so that we can be locally on the ground, having these conversations within our communities and doing this work in partnership with all these national organizations. So that's just what I wanted to say.
Awesome. Thank you, Catherine. Yeah. And I think that I'm glad that you were able to join and that you're the first person to share. I know we had talked about having a Humanity First Movement kind of formally be part of this, and that I'm glad that you were able to and I think we've dropped in, if you haven't already dropped in the website that can help everybody understand if you're doing something hyper local or at the state level, that's, and doing a lot of very targeted specific things for your state, which is important, but also want to be able to understand what are the right kind of moments to come to the national side of things. Or if you're doing something and there's something happening in another state that's very similar, where you can actually kind of learn best practices or use some of their existing tools so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Humanity First Movement is an amazing place to be able to get some of those resources, and they do a great job of helping Income Movements kind of stay abreast of all of the different things that are happening as well, so that we can understand when is the right time to make something that's been local become national because of interest in the community for there to be kind of a larger effort, et cetera. So really, really great.
Yeah, we had been invited to be kind of participating in the kind of conversation at the beginning, but had chose not to because we're still kind of getting our house in order. But one of the things I've really seen is that, like Stacy just said, one group of volunteers creates something amazing, and then it's just super easy for us to kind of pull it across the network and share it to other areas, and vice versa. So yeah, there's a lot of small local communities that are growing, and we just want to support that work. So hopefully we will be stronger and more ready to kind of do a formal presentation and take more people on by the next quarterly. So, but nice to chat with you all.
Awesome. Any other, I think I just saw Chelsea just ask if there's any other stacks. Anybody else that wants to chime in about any of the things so far? Ariel, I think you're going to be given the keys in just a second. Maybe.
Okay, so yeah, I just thought it was a good idea because I'm seeing a lot of reports in my state of California that I don't know if anyone saw this in the chat. California EDD is just bungling things up in a way that is just beyond anything. I don't know how it is in any of your states. So not only does that mean that that people's claims are all out of whack because 1.4 million unemployment claims have been mixed with things that they may think is like potential fraud. So now they're mixing in the bad guys with the good guys, and that's leading to all of these heartbreaking stories of people late on these payments and late on this and late on this. And personally, I have a whole month of February that is stuck in pending status. And I contacted my legislature, and they were telling me to, what were they telling me? They told me that it's because I have to file a new claim. But I said that I got an email that said California EDD just filed that claim for me. And guess what? If I have never, reached out to you guys and contacted you, I would have never known it was because I had to file a new claim, even though I don't even see a button for doing that. And so they're keeping people high and dry. They're sending them on wild goose chases, and you can't even see a penny of these $300 if the state messes up your unemployment claim anyway. So like, it cannot be a lifeline. Your hands cannot be in the hands of people like this who send you on these wild goose chases, string you along, and are so confused, and everything is just like a gamble. It's inhumane. I just want to say that.
Thank you, Ariel. And I think that I think it's also it lends, the story or the experience that you're having is sadly not unique. It's a story that millions are experiencing, and leaving so much up to the states. I mean, I'm not in any way going to say like, oh, the federal government knows how to do everything perfectly, but there are the unemployment insurance and some of these most important kind of core lifelines that are happening are state run, and even just the differences between one state and another, and how well they implement it, like how archaic or modern their system for getting people into a program is, as well as their willingness or interest in
Right.
in increasing amounts during this time. It's all left up to the state, which means that somebody in a state like Oregon that has actually pretty good unemployment insurance program and some really good programs in place versus somebody that's in Florida or Alabama, where there's just like horrifying numbers of people that are eligible that aren't able to actually access any of this. So
This is about, justice first and foremost.
Right.
You paid in, you deserve it. If it were the other way around and you were sending the state on wild goose chases, and if you didn't have your things in order, you'd face fines, you'd face penalties, you'd be stereotyped as like a bad person. But it's fundamentally unjust to force people to not work and then just say, oh, we're messing up your one and only lifeline through our incompetence, and there's nothing you can do about it. So
Yeah.
for all of those, yeah, just bang on that justice point too, not just
Yep.
like, oh, it's just free money, right? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Brendan, you've joined us. What did you want to add?
Hey everyone, love these meetings. Sorry that I'm late. So I was just very interested to see in the email that we got from Humanity First movement that I got as a state leader is they plugged the community site that you guys are creating, and I guess I probably missed a lot of that part of the presentation here, but I'm just excited about that. And any comments you have about kind of the vision there and how we can connect more, I think that'd be really cool to talk about.
No, we actually have not talked about basic income community at all. We've been focused on so many other things. And so perfect. Nice job, Brendan. Way to bring it back to another piece of what has been happening over the last few months. So we did, and we can I'll share my screen in just a second to bring it up so that everybody has it as a point of reference. But Income Movement a little while ago, really around Christmas time, we launched the basic income community. I'll pull it up. And the idea of this, it's technically Income Movement is hosting this, but it's really just because somebody has to host it. The idea behind this really is providing an online public, like very public, open online space for us to be having conversations, for us to understand what's going on in the full like basic income community, and for us to and for you guys to kind of help drive the narrative, help drive the ideas, help drive the information that we know is kind of so critical to building a movement. So this is really kind of like a forum on steroids. And so this has opportunities for conversations, for you to join conversations, but it's also a place to see what kinds of events are happening, to learn more about organizations, and just to share cool articles or cool information. So you can see along the top, there's, one of the pages is about like, what is UBI? And there's actually a bunch of different kind of forums in here, like books and articles and reports that talk about what is UBI. And you can actually open these up and start to see things that have been shared and conversations that are happening with different people. We've launched it. It's been a really soft launch because we've been doing so much work all together on the congressional pressure, because that's so time sensitive. But this is here, and we imagine and see this growing organically over time, however it is that you guys want it to grow. And so this is, we have stuff around the ecosystem, and that starts to get at or different organizations, the different pilot programs that are out there. There's a lot of the topics that we've covered today. This is a place where you can just start to drop things that you see and have it really be kind of a resource or an information and conversation hub, so that we, and ultimately, the reason we created this, the primary reason we created this is because most of the conversations, most of the resource sharing and the tool sharing that happens within the basic income community right now is either happening on social media channels, which like Reddit or Facebook, which for some people is a turnoff just because they don't want to be plugged into some of those channels, or the culture of the channels, like doesn't align with what they're kind of interested in. So it kind of is a little bit of a more limited or kind of filtered experience. Or it's happening behind closed doors. It's happening in Slack channels. It's happening on Google Drives. It's happening in a way that doesn't allow somebody who's just UBI curious to be like, hey, what's going on? What's that thing? And to find what's happening in the community. Right now, if you Google UBI or basic income, most of what's there is articles and videos that have been curated or that have gone through some kind of filtering process, but this is a place where we can kind of define how some of these things are being talked about. It's also an opportunity for us to be able to set the tone and to help invite others who maybe just want to learn more into a community that's a great community that's all about kind of curiosity and humanity and dignity, like to get deep into the politics space, but do it in a way that's really respectful and thoughtful. Like, I think these are the things that we bring as together as a community is profoundly different than most other communities. And I think, and so the idea here is like, let's be public about this. Let's give people an opportunity to just come across what's going on in the community, and not have that be through the lens of what Fox News thinks about UBI or what Huffington Post thinks about UBI, but like, what do we as a grassroots community think about UBI? What are the important conversations we're having that are helping us win hearts and minds and change people's perspectives on why cash is so important? Let's share that information. So that's really kind of the idea behind this. Again, we basically host it because it takes, you just have to pay for, an annual cost for this kind of stuff. But this isn't about income movement at all. It's just really kind of a tool out there for the community to use in whatever way you guys want to.
Well, I just want to say that that's really exciting. I love the philosophy behind it. I think it's going to be a great tool. I can't wait to talk to Max Guinness and Scott Santens and Michael Tubbs and Giselle Huff and whoever else, Catherine Maloney, all these other bright minds. So that should be really fun. And yeah, I hope we can really make some progress on that platform and draw some UBI curious people in there. So appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks, Brendan, for bringing that up. It's awesome. Okay, so some surveys.
Yeah. There's a one last stack, but I'm not sure if it's a stack. Sylvester, your hand was up, so I don't know if that was meant to be a stack, but I brought you in anyways.
Sylvester, if you want to add something, you get to. In the meantime, I'm going to pull up the survey data. Interrupt me if you want to, Sylvester, if you have something that you want to chime in on, okay? I'm going to share my screen with raw survey data. Okay, so for those of you who took this survey, we'll drop the survey link in again in case some people came late and haven't taken this yet, but we've got a survey out that I think it's 10 or 12 questions here, just asking a little bit more about what you all want to, what kinds of topics. Some of these are just open-ended so that the data doesn't aggregate in exciting visual ways, but topics that you want to cover for different events and things like that. The event series that we shared just a few minutes ago with Rennie and the Inherent Good team, some of those topics came directly out of this, as well as some of the potential topics, thinking about a lot of what we see in here is related to those three different general themes, like trainings and best practices and tools, kind of how to be an advocate as effectively as you would like to be, informational, kind of panel discussions and roundtables of like kind of experts in the space to dig deep into conversations and topics, whether it's understanding, going deeper into the universal versus targeted and what happens, like the philosophical differences between those two different approaches of basic income, guaranteed income that's very targeted with certain thresholds of income versus universal, getting deeper into that, getting into the history of UBI, thinking about UBI as a policy from a few different perspectives. These are all things that you guys have brought up here as potential pieces of what could be part of that summer event series, or that could be part of the conversations that happen after one of the movie nights. Like we could think about targeting a movie that will give us an opportunity to go deeper into some of these components. We also asked you like what might be the highest priority topic, and are there people that you would love to invite and like to actually hear from in some of those conversations? So we see quite a few really great recommendations here around people that you guys want to hear from. So we'll, after this, for some of these that are more open-ended, we can share some kind of summary, like word clouds or kind of summary visuals, and add them into the slide deck that we shared today. We got a couple of requests from people if we would share the slide deck that was part of the meeting today, and we can absolutely do that. We'll add a couple more components in here from the results of the survey so that you guys have that as well. Just it's kind of good to. We asked a little bit about Clubhouse because there's lots of people there's a lot of great conversations happening over there, a lot of great opportunities to actually cast a wider net. Start to talk about basic income with people who are talking about other topics that we know there's a clear intersection of basic income with, but maybe have never thought about it in that way. So really cool opportunity. And we asked, if people want to be on Clubhouse but need an invite. We're starting to pull resources of invites and things like that, just to make sure that anybody in the community who wants to be part of what's happening there can. So we'll be following up. If you said, I want to be on Clubhouse and I don't have an invite, you will be getting a follow-up in the next 24 to 48 hours with it gathering whatever we need from you if we don't have it to be able to invite you. So definitely a good place for you to do that. And then of course the films, we shared some of the films, Trial Chicago 7, Social Dilemmas in there. I love films, so I'm all for this. I watch films all the time and I love to talk about them. And so I am excited about having a Friday night film series with you all. Nomadland has come up multiple times, which is really exciting. If you guys aren't aware, it's a recent new release with Frances McDormand being really kind of demonstrating or showing like a caravanning kind of community culture, people who are really kind of living outside of what we might think of as kind of a standard economic system, and the kind of community that's born of that. And it's a very quiet, lovely film. So, but intersects with, it's just such a big part of like, how do we think about work? Who's doing the work? What's the dignity or lack of dignity that happens in our system when we are kind of equating value with work, human value with work and things like that. It looks like most of you would be interested in watching a movie and hanging out, having a conversation. This is on a scale of 1 to 7. We're just under a 6. So most of you guys are saying 6s and 7s as far as like, yeah, you'd want to actually be part of some conversations. We also started to wanted to understand a little bit more like, where are you at? We're a year into this pandemic, and there's been a lot of really important wins in the last week or two that I think have helped us, at least at Income Movement, when we're having conversations, the team is having conversations. It's like, okay, all this work is paying off. Like we're seeing something important happen out of all this work. Certainly about 3 weeks ago, it didn't feel that way. I think everybody, I don't know how you all are feeling with your family and friends and just community, but it was starting to feel like we were hitting a wall, and a wall of just like, kind of a wall of devastation. And so as we were talking internally about that, we wanted to make sure that that we're actually giving space to the community to talk about like, what's going on, how are you, and what do you need from the community. I know I mentioned this at one of the weekly State of the Movement meetings, but I think a really important piece of what's happened to us as humans over the last year is many of us have been hit with what psychologists would call kind of major life moments, like huge life moments that usually don't, that we might only experience several times, a few times in our lifetimes, whether it's like the death of a very close loved one, a difficult health scare or issue, losing a job, losing a home, or having to move, finding yourself financially in kind of a devastating moment. So many of these things many of us are experiencing one on top of another. And when you're experiencing anything that's related to economics, that's related to like the stress and anxiety of that, in addition to health and also death, it's pretty overwhelming. And so we've done a lot of celebrating here together because a lot of really important things have happened, and that's important. It's important to celebrate the work. And also it's important to come together and not just equate our worth in this community together with the actions that we can take to help move the ball along. And, it's not, when we get into that mode of the only way that you're a powerful member of this grassroots community is if you're writing letters to your congressperson or whatever, it's in many ways kind of the embodiment of what we know is wrong with our economy, and the idea of equating somebody's worth with their work, with their, the actual physical work, the labor that they do as part of this society. And so we wanted to make sure that we're not so myopic around legislation, build champs, pass, it's important because like we also know like we need to get cash to people. Let's get cash to people. It's going to help with these other things. It's going to alleviate so much of the financial stress potentially if we can get cash into the hands of people. And also it's a heavy burden for a lot of us, or a lot of us don't have the bandwidth right now to be doing that because a loved one just passed away and you're trying to figure out how to grieve. And so these next few questions were really about that, making sure that we aren't, that we're thinking holistically about our community.
I get you, Stacy. It's kind of like, if your friend is attacked, by a bear, of course you're going to help them. So they live through that. And then when you're being attacked, they help you. And I think that's kind of like what our society doesn't see. It's like when one of us is feeling like stressed or overwhelmed and stuff like that, people should come to their aid. And then in return, then once you get that person stabilized, they're in a position to kind of help someone else get stabilized. I'm not saying it's like a tit for tat, but I'm just saying it's like, like the people who I can't stand are the people who don't understand how, like someone in distress shouldn't be, working as much, because they once you get them to that stabilized mode, then they're in a better position to do, things and
That's
all
right.
that stuff. And that's really what we're fighting for over here, I think.
That's right. So we asked this question about what adjective or phrase describes your current state of mind, and there's a pretty good broad range here: feeling defeated or frustrated or apathetic or driven or hopeful. And so just wanted to share kind of, this is where people are landing. And that these are the kinds of things that are going to help us think about what are the events, the actions, the kind of community opportunities that we want to make sure that we're providing, and that we're not getting too focused in one, specific area. And certainly the basic income community that Brendan just was lovely, enough to like bring up is a place where some of this can happen also, like where we can start to understand more about what as a community it is that we need. But it's powerful to see where people, as just a gut check-in, where people are landing. And then we also asked, what do you need most right now from the community? I'm gonna make this a little bit larger. There we go. So you can see on the bar graph, you can't see the full question, the full answer. But the blue bar here is community camaraderie, a sense of connection. The yellow one is information, new ideas, deeper inquiry. The light blue is inspiration from leaders, politicians who support basic income. Orange is opportunities to take action and impact legislation and more. And then the purple is events and tools to engage my local community. So these are definitely going to help us, I think, make sure that we're providing some of the opportunities. In many ways, this is kind of a jumping off point for the next set of conversations that we want to have on Clubhouse and also in our weekly State of the Movements. We're going to dive deeper into some of these to make sure that we're understanding kind of priorities within each of these. So when it comes to opportunities to take action or inspiration from leaders and politicians, who do you want to hear from? What's the format that would be most powerful for you? Like some of those kinds of things, so that when we design that, it's designed to kind of meet the needs that are coming out of this. Okay, we're now almost 40 minutes over, but I want to make sure, is there anybody else who hasn't spoken yet that would like to share any thoughts or ideas from here? I see that Colin dropped something in a little while ago asking if there's a space in our strategies to address the idea of meritocracy and this idea of you work hard and play by the rules that you'll get ahead. Well, that's for sure something that I think this might have been asked right before we went into some of the topics, but that's come up in the survey quite a few different times as something to, as one of those topics to do something a little bit deeper on. And I think that one of the things that we're thinking about here also is, and that it's great to see what Madeline shared with the community of practice for pilots that they've pulled together. What was great to see on those resources and pages is that it was a pretty wide variety of kinds of resources. It's tools, it's, white papers and 2-pagers, as well as videos, as well as kind of a range of things that can be good resources. And I think those are the things that we want to make sure we're doing also. It's great to have an event like a roundtable, but what's besides the recording of that roundtable, what's the leave behind or the 2-pager of like great arguments for, universal versus targeted, basic income or whatever. Like, how can we make sure that we're just growing the full type of tool sets here, so that if you aren't able to participate in a panel discussion, there's still something for you to dig into and use as you do the work. So that's the kind of stuff we want to make sure that we're having conversations with you guys in the next few weeks in the weekly State of the Movement meetings to make sure we're thinking about what it'll take to support those things. Okay. Chelsea, were there any other stacks?
Nope.
Okay. Well, nice job, everybody. Way to hang in there. Almost, or we're approaching 3 hours. This was a long haul, but really appreciate it. We're approaching 2.5 hours. But again, lovely conversation. Let's continue to be in community together. Let's continue to find those opportunities to get energized, to have fun, to have an impact. And let's continue to build the coalitions together. So be in touch. We hope to see you in the next week. We will, like I said, follow up with the video of this and resources, the decks, links, all of the things, so that you guys can dig back into things in case things flew by in the chat a little too fast. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you, everybody, for joining. We'll see you soon.
And, oh, Stacy, I know that the time has passed, so I'm not sure, but if you're on Clubhouse,
Yes.
I think there is a Clubhouse happening after for just kind of a
Hannah.
UBI hang.
Thank you so much.
Oh, Hannah,
There it is.
nice.
Hannah just joined. Yeah, Hannah just shared it. If you want to continue to have a conversation, let's do that over there. And we'll also share these on Slack and, you know, on Twitter and all of those things, so that if you didn't see it, you can go and go over to Income Movement's Twitter or onto Humanity First Movement Slack, and you'll see it in the announcements. Okay, awesome. Thanks so much, you guys. Have a wonderful evening.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Everyone.
Thank you.